In the Week 5 slide lecture, the British invasion was first introduced. The Brits fell in love with American blues and rhythm and blues music. At a time when American music took more of a pop direction, the Brits embraced, recorded cover versions, and in many ways performed the blues better than some U.S. artists. This lecture presents two English rock groups that represented contrasting segments of British youth culture in the 1960s and 1970s. Alexis Corner was the English blues promoter similar to Alan Freed or Bill Graham, in that Corner, an ardent lover of American blues, provided a venue and subsequent community for British blues enthusiasts. The next few slides feature the Rolling Stones, the longest-lasting rock band in the history of rock. Their manager, Andrew Oldham, knew this band could not be another Beatles. Early images of the Rolling Stones reveal a similar clean-cut, matching look to many British bands in the early 60s. Oldham convinced the Stones to abandon this image and instead become a rougher, bad boy, blues-centered band. This worked for the Rolling Stones, whose band name, like the Dylan song of the same title, came from a Muddy Waters song. What do you think is meant by the term a Rolling Stone? What does it mean with regards to blues musicians, and why do you think the Rolling Stones adopted this title rather than their early band name, the Blue Boys? The Stones' early music was mostly cover versions of blues and rhythm and blues songs. Oldham knew that in order to have staying power, the guys must write original material. In Keith Richards' autobiography, Life, he describes an evening at Oldham's home when Oldham locked him and Mick Jagger in his kitchen and told them not to come out until they had written a song. Once the first song was written, the Stones' writing efforts flourished. The song Satisfaction is probably one of the most recognizable songs in rock history. It contains a very memorable riff, a simple, stripped-down structure, and subject matter that is very matter-of-fact. Jagger wrote in the blues tradition about what was bothering him at the time. Not only did the Stones look and sound like bad boys of rock, their lives were lived on the edge. The members of the band all had issues with alcohol and drug use. Keith and Mick were arrested more than once for drugs. Unfortunately, founding band member Brian Jones' drug use made him unreliable, and as his behavior became very erratic, it was agreed that he would leave the band. Less than a year later, Jones was found dead in his swimming pool. He was only 27. The 60s did not end well for the Rolling Stones. After the success of Woodstock, promoters of the Rolling Stones decided to attempt a Woodstock West concert in December of 1969 in Northern California. Many things went wrong with this concert, including the stabbing and death of an 18-year-old audience member. Part of this week's assignment includes renting and watching the documentary Gimme Shelter, which captured this event. Be sure to pay special attention to all the problems that occurred in the planning of this event, even before the tragedies of the concert itself. As the Stones entered the decade of the 70s, they maintained their image of the bad boys of rock. The album Sticky Fingers is an excellent example of the type of bad boy image the Stones promoted. The album cover had a working zipper for this man's picture of a crotch. The band recorded many of the tracks for this album while on tour in the U.S. at Muscle Shoals Studio in Alabama. Parts of these recording sessions are captured in the documentary Gimme Shelter. Despite the failures at Altamont, the Rolling Stones continued to be a dominant rock band through the 70s, 80s, 90s, and to the present day. Many critics call their album Exile on Main Street, recorded while the band was on exile from England due to legal issues, their best. Until the Irish band U2 eclipsed the Stones, their concert tours had earned the most money of any other rock band. In 2008, Academy Award-winning director Martin Scorsese filmed the Rolling Stones concert at the historic Beacon Theater in New York. Be sure and watch the trailer for this great documentary. There was a fairly clear division in youth culture in the 60s in England. Great Britain is a much smaller country than the U.S., with the youth experiencing different economic issues, class issues, and continued effects from the Second World War. The next band in this lecture will come to represent the mod culture in England. Note the differences between the rockers and the mods. Besides the more obvious fashion differences, these groups had distinctive musical interests. Although amphetamines in the form of speed were taken by many bands to keep up with busy tour schedules, it was very prominent with the mods. The members of The Who adopted the image as the band for the mod community, with their song My Generation becoming the anthem for the mods. An element of The Who's performance that appealed to the mods and captured the simmering angst of many mods was The Who's stage destruction. Lead guitarist and main songwriter Pete Townshend explained the elements of violence in their performances as an interest in an art movement called auto-destructive art. Be sure and watch the video clip from The Who at the Monterey Pop Festival of 1967. The Who have made many contributions to the history of rock. Their concerts were measured as some of the loudest concerts on record. Their album Tommy is considered the first rock opera. Townshend incorporated many new sounds and electronics in many of their songs. Their second rock opera, Quadrophenia, succinctly captures the mod cultures in England in the 1960s. Both Tommy and Quadrophenia were eventually made into movies. The 70s ended very badly for the members of The Who. In 1978, after over a decade of excesses, The Who's drummer Keith Moon dies. One year later, prior to a show in Cincinnati, Ohio, 11 concertgoers were trampled to death when the crowd rushed the doors to the concert hall. The members of The Who were not told of this tragedy until after they played the concert. This incensed them, and combined with the recent loss of their drummer, they lost interest in touring. For many reasons, The Who are given the title of the godfathers of punk rock. In many ways this title fits, and simultaneously does not fit. Their music is far more complex than many early punk rock bands. But their stage performance, use of power chords, and angst help define their godfather status. The members of The Who loved the U.S. and were heartbroken about the disaster in Ohio. In 2001, the remaining members of the group and drummer Zach Starkey, Ringo Starr's son, played 1 month after the 9/11 disaster at a concert for New York. This concert was held for the firefighters and policemen and women of New York City, who desperately needed a night to rock out and release some stress. Be sure and watch the video of The Who performing Baba O'Riley from this concert.